Hi, everybody. Let's talk about the full moon in Taurus coming up tomorrow. Before I do that, I'd just like to announce for those that might be interested, I'm looking for a small group um, doing a workshop on Venus, the descent of Inanna's journey. Um, we are going to be looking at the astrology, the mythology, um, just trying to understand what that journey is all about, because that's what's going to happen with Venus very shortly. In December, Venus will disappear out of the sky. She's a morning star at the moment. She will disappear out of the sky. She will descend into the underworld. She will be invisible for quite a few weeks, and then she will be reborn and ascend as the evening star. That descent into the underworld, which is described perfectly by the descent of Inanna, going through the seven gates and everything that means and the like, is what we're going to be focusing on, and how we might work with that journey ourselves in a holistic and integrative way. I want it to be a sacred, uh, divine feminine space, for lack of a better word. Men can join as well. It's not just for women. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have or don't have about the cycle of Venus or about the descent of Inanna. All that matters is that if you're interested in working with a group of people that are really wanting to be present in a journey that will ultimately create some healing, insight, and understanding from our own personal life story and how we might work with this journey over the next several weeks. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's just to give you a little overview of what we're going to be focusing on. The primary thing being Inanna's descent into the underworld. And what does that mean? How can we use it in our life? And how can we actually support each other, through this process as well? So I have several people that have expressed some interest already. They've sent me emails, and I will get back to everybody in the next few days. I'm just putting it out here on YouTube as well, just in case you are not aware that that is something I'm planning to do this month, probably in the second half of November. So reach out if you want to know more details and want to be a part of it. It's going to be um, a very special little workshop, actually, because it'll be a bit different to what I've done in the past. I've done a few things like this in the past before, but not specifically focusing on the descent of Inanna to the extent that I will be in this particular workshop. And it's not going to be based heavily on theory. It's going to be more of an integrative workshop where people can really feel heard and seen as much as they wish to, for the purposes of um, supporting each other and working on something really magical together. The power of unison and people coming together and bringing their energy into something is, um, well, it's many different things, and it depends on, the group and the person leading it and the like. But what I want to bring to this is something very special, very personal, and I want to, collaborate with everyone in the group together. I want us all to come together in a very sacred way that could be very healing for all of us. And we will draw from each other's experiences and learn from each other as well. So if you are interested in this, um, just email me and we'll go from there. It's probably going to be at least a 3-hour workshop, just so you know. Okay. The full moon in Taurus, well, it's an exalted moon, which is lovely. It's a super moon. Exalted just means the qualities that are emphasized by the particular archetype, in this case Taurus, are really accentuated through the moon. So it's a very powerful position for the moon, in other words. It's a supermoon, meaning it's very going to be very close to the Earth, so that, it adds a greater sense of illumination, first of all, just from that astronomical level, if you can see it. But from a psychic, spiritual, psychological, emotional level, it also amplifies all those components within us as well. And it really, the way to really think about this is, where did this cycle begin? Which was a new moon in Libra, a really beautiful new moon in Libra, which was very close to Spica, actually. So this cycle is very Venusian because it started in the sign that Venus rules, Libra, and now it's come to its full moon position in the sign of Taurus, the other sign that Venus rules. So this is, a really powerful Venusian cycle relative to the moon cycle, the lunation cycle. It's got a strong Venusian flavor through it all the way through, in other words. Um, and Venus, has been in Libra through this time and still is in Libra. So I think that helps tremendously because Venus is in rulership in Libra. But on the other hand, Venus also is contending with a few other different things in this journey as well. For example, she's been opposite Chiron the last few days. Um, and the opposition, again, it's very similar to a full moon. The opposition points to the halfway point of where the cycle between Venus and Chiron began, which I'll show you where that began, because that's very important. Here they are here, conjunct in Aries on the 1st of June. So something was born or seeded for all of us at this time with the Venus-Chiron conjunction. Not an easy portal. I'm, always going to say that about Chiron because that is a truth. It's not the only truth about it. Of course, it has all the possibilities and potential for cultivating healing and working on some, again, for lack of a better word, deep wounds, things that we've experienced in life that have really hurt us in the realm of love and relationships and connections. Of course, it can connect to material resources as well, because Venus is about our material resources. And then there's the components of self-worth and self-value and, working on those processes. So, 5 months later, during this full moon, we have Venus opposite Chiron in Libra, really highlighting now more than ever relative to where the conjunction of Venus and Chiron started, which was in Aries, our self, and now she's in Libra opposite Chiron, showing us either illuminating and showing us the work that we've done, or perhaps the further work we need to do around love, around relationships, around self-worth, around self-value, around what we are, accepting, what we are allowing. Because whatever comes in, we've attracted it, invited it, allowed it, whatever the case may be. There's no right or wrong in that. It usually shows up to teach us something. So the value in those experiences, even though they may be difficult initially, is to have enough discernment, objectivity, and detachment to notice what is being shown to you and how you might learn from that experience, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But either way, Venus Chiron is a very tricky kind of energy because it brings up our vulnerabilities, our insecurities, and our fear of rejection in a nutshell. So that's quite a potent portal taking place during this full moon as well. And it is Venus, and Venus is the ruler of the full moon because Venus rules Taurus. So I think perhaps with the few comments I've made, you can see that this lunation cycle is very much about Venus matters in our life. Um, the full moon is square Pluto as well. And I think that's a very important point because the full moon is highlighting the axis of Scorpio and Taurus, that polarity. And as soon as the sun entered Scorpio, the first thing it did was form a square to Pluto. And so we started Scorpio season with the sun in Scorpio, square Pluto in Aquarius, which I think, from a collective perspective, that's very, very obvious in numerous ways, especially around all the different protests that are going on. There's so many going on that it's virtually impossible to keep track of everything, but it is, absolutely important to be aware of and to realize that this is Pluto out of bounds in the southern declination, which with all the reading and study and research I've done on that, um, is about the people, the people rising. So this is the time of the people to rise. The tables are completely turning. It's a very long process, very long process. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're in, literally the heart of it. So all these pockets and windows of energies transitioning and flowing through, with new moons, full moons, and the rest of the planets, that they are all part of this bigger story that's going on. A Pluto squaring this full moon obviously adds a extreme intensity, which is not comfortable for the full moon in Taurus, because a moon in Taurus, whether it's a full moon, a new moon, or just the moon in Taurus, is well, first of all, on its own, it's very stable, it's very practical, it's very sensual, it's very connected to the Venusian aspects of life. So it's about, sensuality, sensual delights and appetites. It's about comfort, enjoyment. It's about security. It's about grounding. It's about, experiencing a sense of centeredness and calmness and stabilizing. It's a stabilizing force. So the moon in Taurus is not really going to like a square from Pluto very much at all, but Pluto is there. So we need to pay attention to that, because it's when, it's a T square essentially, right? And Pluto is holding the vibration, if you like, through this polarity of the sun being in Scorpio and moon being in Taurus. And, Taurus and Scorpio has so much to do with security and our resources, both our own resources and our shared resources on that material, physical plane. But at a deeper level, of course, it is very much about the process of attachment and detachment. Attachment is Taurus, and the detachment would be Scorpio, when it is able to allow something to die or certain things to die and finish and complete. Taurus will hang on, till the absolute maximum, but Scorpio will remind Taurus that it has to also be able to let go in order to integrate more or to grow more or to develop more. Otherwise, the energy becomes stagnant and stuck. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because we have these gorgeous, accentuated Taurian Venusian qualities coming through the full moon, which can act as a real stabilizing force. But the Pluto being wedged in between the sun and the moon is still suggesting that there is something that we are still working through quite deeply internally, that requires us to go through some type of release, some type of metamorphosis, some type of transformation, some type of ending. It's just inevitable. So it's a chilled, kind of relaxed Taurus moon, And the flip side is that it's got Pluto, that reverberating right through the Taurus moon, the intensity of Pluto's energy. And of course, Pluto is the ruler of the sun because Pluto rules Scorpio. So that Taurus moon cannot just operate on its own. It has to work with all these other energies. And perhaps a lot of the transformative processes here are also because it is such a strong Venusian cycle, this particular lunation cycle, in that Venus rules both, Libra and Taurus, and this cycle began at the new moon in Libra. It's reached its, halfway point, full moon, in the sign of Taurus, which is a Venus-ruled sign. A Venus is in Libra. These are all Venusian pointers. And because the sun and the moon are the primary luminaries in the chart, speaking to the feminine and the masculine within all of us, then this is clearly some type of process that we are going through that is speaking to transformative experiences relating to our own inner feminine and masculine, which will be experienced largely through our relationships, how we are relating to other people and what types of connections and situations we are drawing in. And because this is all happening in the in the backdrop of Scorpio season, where we've just had Halloween, the sun entered Scorpio, formed a square to Pluto immediately. Mars has been in Scorpio, invisible. Lilith is in Scorpio, conjunct the sun, opposite the full moon. There's a lot of Scorpio deities, energies floating around the ether. I don't know how you guys have felt, but I have felt this particular Scorpio season to be more intense than previous ones. That's probably due to Pluto being on my ascendant as well, and all these Scorpio energies square my ascendant and my moon. So it's been a pretty intense and interesting journey. I have to say this Scorpio, pardon me, Pluto on the ascendant, it literally does act as some type of, you know, magical, uh, X-ray vision. It really does. And that can be so uncomfortable and so difficult at different times because you're seeing stuff that you maybe don't want to see. And I suppose the benefit of that is that where you might normally um, waste time or give your time and energy to people or situations that may not have the best intentions for you, that Pluto in the ascendant just helps me see right through it so quickly. And also, I think with Scorpio season, and this is why, Halloween happens at this time as well, there's so many entities that are released and floating around. It's like they're on steroids during this time. So I don't know what you yourself have noticed, but I'd be interested to hear because I have seen and heard and felt so many dark forces floating around. I had an experience the other night. I'm not going to go into the details, but I can tell you now, I was sitting with a person who, at the surface level appeared uh, pretty normal, you know, nice enough kind of person. And I spent a few hours with this person and I literally saw uh, the demon come out of this person. This person was possessed. Now, people might think that's pretty, well, I don't know what you might think, but people might not be used to that language or might not think in those terms or might think, oh, that's just in movies or, that's BS or whatever. But I can tell you now it's not. If you have enough sensitivity, empathy, insight and life experience and are able to see and read energies, things like entities it's nothing abnormal. They're everywhere all the time anyway, but certain energies entice them to come out in much stronger ways, such as Scorpio season. So it's been, yeah, a very interesting. I've burnt so much frankincense over the past week, just around my apartment and building and my balcony, and there's just been so many forces trying to, you know, trying to circulate around me. And one thing I've read, and Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about this as well, and various other people do as well, whether it's in the astrological field of work or whether it's in biblical sort of scriptures and teachings or there's many different sources that say the same thing, and that is that uh, the more you sort of clear your energetic field, the cleaner your energetic field is, and the more you work on that, the more these kind of entities are attracted to you because it's kind of like they feel like they're losing you, they're losing their power of you. So they come at someone like you who's consciously working on themselves in a much harder way than they would some person who, and this is not a judgment, this is just a fact, some person who's just, a complete drug addict, hooked on ice every single day, for example, that they are so possessed. The demons don't have to work very hard with them at all. They've already got them. But someone who is much cleaner in their energy field, that these type of entities that do come out a lot stronger during this time are going to come at you hardcore. And I'm saying this through a lived experience, not just through things I've read. And that's what's been happening, the last couple of weeks. It's been extremely intense, to say the least. But it's also a great learning process for me. I've learned a lot out of it, just in terms of myself, And so this applies to all of us. I'm just sharing something about myself to bring in a bit of a personal, sort of factor to this so that it's not just theory and we're not just saying, oh, well, the moon's in Taurus and it's all about peace and it's all about sitting there and eating chocolates. Well, it can be those things, but it's a lot of other things as well. We've always got to kind of bring the whole picture together as much as we can. And at the same time, having said that, we've also got to, I think, we've got to really select what we're going to work with and focus on as well, because there is so much going on that if we were to focus on every single thing, our brain just wouldn't be able to handle it. It'll just go into, an overwhelming sort of territory and zone. It'll just want to shut down because it's just too much activity, for the nervous system and the like. For example, look at all these comets, that are flying around at the moment. Obviously, 3-1 Atlas is the talk of the town. And there's so many theories on that, right? I don't know what you guys think of that. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and opinions. Um, I'm not sure that everyone, or pardon me, I'm not sure that anyone has the exact real truth and knowing about that 3-1 Atlas at the moment. And I think perhaps over time that will be revealed. But even with that, whether you believe in some of the different theories, like, there's talk that it's not a comet, it's it's an alien spaceship or whatever one believes, it's entirely up to them. What I say to that is, if focusing on it in a way where it can bring something good for you, whether it's through awareness or consciousness, or you just feel good by tuning into the vibration of that 3-1 Atlas, well, then do that. What does it matter how it's identified? I think we need to also trust our intuition. This 3-eye Atlas is so Neptune, Saturn, that's exact, and in Pisces, Neptune's back at 29 degrees, the anaretic degree, right? And there's Saturn there at Pisces as well, and they're both retrograde. And I think we are just seeing the very beginning of so much more of what's going to come through in this way. And it is a tricky thing because it's a literal description of Neptune and Saturn, at least in the third dimension, physical reality, and how those planets are so different in this third dimension reality. Just on a practical level, they are very different, right? And the Neptune Saturn, one of the biggest things that's going to come out of the conjunction of them being at zero Aries, quite apart from, the seeding and the birthing of incredible journeys that are going to begin on this planet, collectively and for us individually, it will also hold very strongly that experience or that thought or that feeling of what the fuck is actually really happening? Is this really real? Or is this, completely delusional? That's going to be the most common theme with the Saturn Neptune conjunction. And we're going to really have to sharpen uh, our instincts and intuition. That there's just there's no two ways about that. So the reason I bring all that up is because there is so much going on. There is so much activity going on in the sky, on the earth, in the collective unconscious. There's, bigger implications, bigger cyclic things happening, and it is, incredibly overwhelming if we are to focus on all of those things on a daily basis. Thus, the reminder of a full moon in Taurus perhaps is a reminder to just relax, to just take some time out, just to put it very simply, to rest, to go and have a spa, to sleep, whatever it is you need to help you just relax and rest. Um, our, we are so, how can I put it? We're constantly stimulated, by the amount of information and activities and the diverse things going on all over the shop, right? There's just so much going on. It's very, very easy to lose our center. And I guess that's the good thing about a moon in Taurus. It can remind us of that, to just get some grounding happening. Um, Now, in this full moon chart, quite apart from the square of Pluto, which adds, such an intense energy to this placid, kind of chilled out moon. We've got the Venus Chiron opposition, as I already spoke about. This is the halfway point, so it's just showing us, you know, um, how far we've come in the last few months, last 5 months, relative to Venus Chiron themes in our life. We have a Mars-Uranus opposition. That's a very, very interesting opposition. And also, of course, Mercury has been opposite Uranus as well. Now, Mercury-Uranus opposition is freaking awesome, to be honest. It's one of the best kind of portals or signatures, for intuition and insight to just skyrocket. It's left brain, right brain, literally. And in the archetypes that correspond to left brain, right brain being Sagittarius, left brain being Gemini. So that, this is an amazing portal relative to studying, especially astrology or anything else actually that takes you outside of the box, outside of the normal way of thinking and realizing. So there can be some real, revolutionary type of aha moments collectively and or individually that can come through with the Mercury opposite Uranus. That's a great aspect. Any Mercury Uranus aspect is brilliant, actually. A lot of astrologers have Mercury Uranus aspects, just as a side note. Now, the Mars Uranus opposition, that's a bit of a different story because there can be, it's a very dynamic energy, obviously, an opposition, and it can cause a lot of different things to happen. It depends always on the individual and the circumstances, but fundamentally, it can bring up a lot of restlessness and a strong desire for freedom. Um, and it can be reckless and it can be spontaneous and it can go a bit wild and it can act a bit crazy and it can, just create excitement and, you may be enticed or uh, feel desires to do things that you normally wouldn't do. That's Mars Uranus. It obviously often also speaks to accidents because it's such a electrifying, impulsive type of energy that if it's not, I suppose, harnessed in some kind of way, um, if you jump in a red sports car, a Ferrari, and well, there's a Mars Uranus going on, and you just feel that exhilaration of wanting to, drive, incredibly fast in, a sports car. I'm just using a basic analogy here. That could be a recipe for disaster under a Mars Uranus transit. I've seen it, countless times when that's happened in people's lives, for instance. So, that proneness to accidents is just something to be aware of. But I think at a more sort of evolutionary level, this is this is Uranus stimulating the desires of Mars to be, broken free, as it were, to be activated, um, and explored in, vast territory. Sagittarius is about freedom. It's about exploring and going beyond our little comfort zone, going outside of the box that we normally sit in, so to speak. So it's exploring new territory that can really inspire us and give us that deep sense of freedom. Now, that can be obviously, approached in a physical way. If someone's really physical, that's likely to be a very physical type of experience. And Mars certainly does connect to our stamina, our energy, our willpower, our physicality, the juice in the tank, the energy levels, and the like. But somebody might use that Mars in Sag opposite Uranus, that sort of exhilarative, exhilarating, kind of stimulating impulse and energy that is felt internally, might be used in numerous other ways as well. It just depends on what tickles your fancy, what you are focused on, what you want to pour that energy into. The only thing to be aware of is that the accident kind of prone business that can happen with the Mars Uranus. And I suspect that will, ruffle some things across the earth, that might be earthquakes and things like that. Uranus is going to dip back into Taurus as well. It's retrograde there. So it's getting ready to go back into Taurus and it will be there. It goes into Taurus in a few days' time after the full moon. And it will be in Taurus, I think, until April next year. So yeah, probably a lot more Earth kind of disasters and things. Although I don't really like to focus on that. That's kind of inevitable. But Yeah, I guess with a Mars opposite Uranus in the signs that have to do with the left brain, right brain, this is a real opportunity to activate intuition and inspiration and go into aspects of your mind or consciousness, or it could be traveling. Sag is, ninth house traveling, but it can be traveling with our mind as well. Yeah. So it's just up to us what we do with that energy, of course. Um, Mercury will retrograde. I think I briefly mentioned this on the 10th of November back into Scorpio. And as a result, it's going to form a conjunction to the Sun and be reborn as a morning star who is Apollo. The appearance of Mercury, let me see, the conjunction occurs on the 20th of November, and Mercury will then be invisible for several days and appear on the 29th of November as a morning star, which is Apollo. Apollo is the sun god, the god of truth and light, and many other different things. But usually, a good way to think about Mercury when it's reborn as a morning star, it's a really great time to plant new seeds. Morning star, Apollo, is literally the god that from the point of view of our mind and our thoughts and ideas and things that we may want to do, Apollo plants the seeds for us. And then when Mercury becomes the evening star, which is Hermes, we can see the fruition of that. So just keep that in mind when Mercury becomes visible, or when he forms a conjunction to the Sun, which is otherwise known as a cazimi, 20th of November. That's a really special day for the Sun and Mercury. That's, the Sun in the heart, Mercury in the heart of the Sun, cazimi, and that's Mercury being reborn as a morning star. So that's a really useful time to plant some seeds with your thinking, because Apollo will help you birth them, basically. I might come back and unpack that a bit further if I have time. I'll see. What else is going on in this chart? I guess it's worth noting that there is a yod with Venus, and perhaps it's worth mentioning because this full moon is ruled by Venus. So the yod is with Neptune. So Venus is at the apex, forming a quincunx to Neptune and forming a quincunx to Uranus out of sign, but close enough. Close enough. It's only like less than 2 degrees away. So we know yods usually, indicate a fork in the road. Some fated type of event can come up, a twist in the narrative. Um, and obviously, it's going to have to do with Venusian matters. So that can be in love, relationships, finances, resources. And for some people, that might be more obvious and come to life more than it would for other certain individuals. I guess it just depends on, the Venusian aspects of your life and what's going on there. But I think it's worth noting that, there is a yod here with Venus. Venus is the ruler of this full moon. So, yeah, it'd just be interesting to see what people experience with that. What else do we have? Those are the main things, really, with this full moon. I guess it's just thinking about the Venus influence. Um, and just to remember that Venus, yes, she's in Libra and she's in rulership, and that's more the Aphrodite. sort of level of Venus, the Libran component, I mean. But Venus is a morning star still. So she's working very strongly on the earth. She's working with us as a Pallas Athena goddess. And I've mentioned this before, Pallas Athena, Venus morning star, in other words, which is Venus's current cycle, she's more stable in relationships. And one thing to remember and note about that, if you're having an experience where, let's just say you're single, and you're having dates here and there or meeting people and nothing is really coming out of it and it doesn't feel stable at all, that might be because, you know, Pallas Athena, she has clear vision. So she helps us see into the truth of situations. So instead of wasting your time, I guess I bring this up because this is what I've been experiencing. I've met several people, I've had a few dates here and there, and it's not gone beyond one date because I can see almost instantly through that particular person. That's Pluto and my ascendant. It's a very interesting thing, very interesting journey. So you too might be having a similar experience and might think, well, Venus morning star, she's supposed to be more stable in relationships. Well, where's the fucking stability in my life with relationships? Well, she might just be helping you get rid of the stuff that is, it's not gonna work for you. It's like sifting through layer upon layer upon layer until you find that little diamond. Oh, it's funny. Um, oh yeah, just one other little thing that could be interesting for people who are into the healing arts through herbs, particularly. So you may make your own herb sort of tinctures and potions and things like that for that could be for times when you're unwell, or it could just be for your overall general well-being. I certainly make a lot of those different things, have been for a little while now, and I love it. The goddess Circe, spelled Circe. Sometimes you'll see it spelt with a K instead of a C. She's a Greek goddess. She's a goddess of sorcery and magic and herbs and potions. She's a very, very powerful goddess. She's in Cancer at the moment, and she's forming pretty much an exact sextile to this moon. And I think that for some little witches out there, some little herbalists, funny actually, this guy that I'm just a side note, guy that I met the other day, I asked him, what does he see when he looks at me? And the first thing he said was, he said, oh, I see a little bit of witch. And I just kind of giggled at that because I'm thinking, a little? Yeah, right, buddy. Anyway, you got no clue. That was a funny moment. So getting back to Circe, she's a bit of a witch. She's a goddess of, herbs and potions. She had so much power, she could turn humans into beasts. Humans into beasts, right? Animals. So, you don't muck around with her energy. She's very, very powerful. Have you seen a picture of her? Let me show you a classic picture of her. I really love this picture as well. Let me just find it. Just bear with me. Here it is. Um, okay, I'll just save it on the desktop. Let me just show you what she looks like. Tell me she doesn't look like a sorcerer. Where are you? There she is. Check her out. And see her? sitting in the chair. Not really a chair, it's more like a throne, isn't it? And see that bowl she's holding? That's where her magic is. They're her potions. Now this is somebody's taken because there's an original sort of piece of artwork that is exactly like this, but someone's taken it and just, made it a bit brighter and the like. But it is an old picture essentially. So Circe is, or Kirki is how you say it in Greek, Kirki. She's sextile this full moon. So people who are into herbalism and, herbs and creating their own medicines and things like that, this can be a powerful time to harvest and make those kind of things, potions and the like, especially with the full moon in Taurus, because Taurus is about herbs, potions. It's medicine in the earth. So Circe is giving some, not only assistance, but some opportunity here to, it might be that you come up with something that you couldn't come up with before, something really valuable and really powerful that can really help heal you or heal others. You might be a person who, has a business in herbs and the like. There's so many different examples that we could consider. But I just thought it was interesting that, being the goddess of sorcery, which in Greek is pharmakia. The word pharmakia is where the word pharmacy comes from. It's medicine, right? Um, and also, what I find very interesting is that the goddess Pythia, who is a priestess that sits at the Oracle of Delphi, where Apollo resided. And I don't know if you've seen a picture of her. I won't bother looking for it, but you can look it up yourself. She's blind actually, and she sits in this really high chair covered with this kind of hood type of thing as she's depicted in the artistry. Um, anyway, she's blind and she's basically a priestess prophet. She prophesizes everything that's going to happen. So people would go to her to get a prophecy, and it was Apollo that is connected to her that gave her the gifts of prophecy and the like. And she's at 27 degrees of Cancer right now, which is right on Jupiter. So Pythia is transiting Jupiter, which is pretty interesting to me because Jupiter is the greater benefic and Cancer is the sign of the past as well. So perhaps some of the prophecies that can come through connect to past wisdom, past Cancer, wisdom, Jupiter, that can be very beneficial for us, Jupiter, through prophecy, Pythia, on Jupiter at the moment. And she's actually going to go retrograde on the 23rd of November. And she, wow, she's going to be retrograde right through to next year sometime. So she's going to be in Cancer, for a few months. I can see here till the end of 28th of February next year, she's still in Cancer and retrograde. And so that feels really important to me with Pythia because Cancer is the past and it's like the mother, the womb, it's the emotional body, it's imagination, it's the prophecies from the past that are trying to come through. Not trying, they are coming through. I guess it's about us being receptive enough to receive whatever it is that's coming through that we need to receive that is important for our integration and path moving forward from a level of prophecy. So I just wanted to mention that towards the end if you've stuck around. And yeah, I will sign off. Leave your comments and questions below. I'm always interested in hearing, what's happening with you guys and how you relate to this material, or you may want to share some things towards this material and reach out if you would like to descend into the underworld with Venus in a beautiful little group that I will be guiding. Really excited about that. When I decide to do these things, it's to me, it feels like Venus is speaking to me, and you could say she's asking me to do this. That's how I feel. Um, and so it feels very, very special for me, this type of workshop. It's something that comes from a very deep place within my heart and soul. So I look forward to hearing from any of you that are interested in that. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon for another transmission. Take care. Enjoy the full moon in Taurus for what it has to offer. And if we can have the less resistance we have with Pluto squaring the full moon, the more we might be able to work deeply through something that is ready to be processed or released at this time. And don't forget Pythia and Circe, offering, prophecy and wisdom and, the magic and sorcery and healing and the like. These are very beautiful energies. And I just want to say, how fucking good is it to come out of Mars in Scorpio, Mars in Sag? You know what? I'm going to come back and talk about Mars in Sag, and perhaps I'll just do a video on Mars in Sag and the Sun Mercury Cazimi. I think that's worthy of a video. So, see you soon.